The room felt heavy, the air thick with tension. The lights overhead cast harsh beams across the long tables where representatives sat, their shadows stretching against the walls. The faint hum of microphones punctuated the stillness, each breath seeming to carry the weight of anticipation. Pam Bondi sat at one end of the table, her posture rigid, her face a mask of determination, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Across from her was Jasmine Crockett, arms crossed, chin tilted upward, eyes glinting with defiance. This was a congressional hearing, but it felt more like a theater, and both women were vying for the starring role. Bondi spoke first, her voice clear and sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. "Oversight isn't about how loud you are, Congresswoman," she said, locking eyes with Crockett. "It's about what you're hiding from. And you weren't trying to uncover truth. You were trying to bury it under emotion." Her words rippled through the room, drawing the attention of some representatives who lifted their heads, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Crockett fired back without hesitation, her voice rising with an angry edge. "I wasn't going to sit there while y'all dragged a good man's name through the mud for political points," she snapped. "You protect a criminal like Donald Trump, then come after a father and his son with manufactured drama. This is your game, not reality." She threw her arms wide, as if accusing the entire room, her eyes blazing with either fury or defense. It was hard to tell. Bondi raised a hand, a calm but commanding gesture. "Let's get this straight," she said, her tone devoid of mockery but firm. "A laptop with verified financial records, eyewitness accounts of international bribery, documented IRS obstruction. That's a distraction to you? But Donald Trump's taxes are a national emergency? Do you believe in justice or just revenge for your party?" The question hung in the air, aimed at Crockett like an arrow, awaiting a response. Crockett didn't back down. "Hunter Biden is a victim," she insisted, her voice steadier now but still fiery. "This scrutiny of him is a smear campaign. And yes, I raised my voice when you tried to speak your facts, because I won't let the truth drown under your noise." She leaned forward, hands pressing into the table, as if physically challenging Bondi. But Bondi's expression remained unyielding. "The problem, Congresswoman," Bondi said, her voice growing colder, sharper, "isn't that you speak passionately. It's that you speak instead of listening. Instead of questioning Hunter Biden, you questioned the committee. Instead of demanding documents, you demanded airtime. Instead of truth, you chose volume." Bondi's gaze bore into Crockett, predatory, waiting for a crack. Crockett leaned back, arms folding again, her face still defiant. The room fell silent, the other representatives watching this verbal duel as if holding their breath. Bondi's words weren't just an accusation. They were a diagnosis, dissecting Crockett's approach piece by piece. "Oversight is sacred," Bondi continued. "It's not performance art. It's not content for your social feed. It's not a stage for your next headline. The people deserve answers. But when you shout them down, when you hijack hearings with tantrums and slogans, you're not standing up for justice. You're burying it." Crockett's lips tightened into a thin line, but she didn't stay quiet. "I brought the truth," she countered, her voice hard and personal. "You're the ones spinning a fake story to smear a man. I didn't bring a monologue. I brought a fight." Her fingers tapped the table, rhythmic, as if turning her words into a physical force. Bondi tilted her head slightly, but it wasn't surrender. It was preparation for her next strike. "No, Congresswoman," she said, her voice dropping almost to a whisper, yet piercing enough to reach every corner of the room. "You didn't bring truth. You pushed it aside. You pointed fingers. You grandstanded. You left the truth untouched. Because for you it wasn't about right or wrong, it was about winning the clip." The atmosphere shifted. Bondi's words seemed to sap Crockett's energy. But Bondi wasn't done. "Today," she said, "I brought something more powerful than applause: accountability. And this time, you'll have to sit through it without the cameras cutting away." Her eyes stayed locked on Crockett, unrelenting. "The United States Congress wasn't meant to be a stage. It was designed for deliberation, for seriousness, for the hard business of governance. But somewhere along the way, between hashtags and hot takes, that changed. And no one symbolizes that change more than you, Congresswoman." Crockett's face hardened, but Bondi's voice pressed on. "I've seen it all," she said. "I've watched the clips, read the headlines, followed the fawning praise from left-wing blogs, calling you a rising star. But this isn't a red carpet. This isn't Twitter. This is a congressional hearing. And I came here with one mission: to burn this circus to the ground." The room was now entirely under Bondi's command. She picked up a remote from the table and pressed a button. A screen behind her flickered to life, playing a clip. Crockett's voice filled the room, loud and smug. "If someone starts talking about somebody's bleach-blonde, bad-built, butch body—" On the screen, Crockett laughed, delivering her viral jab at Marjorie Taylor Greene. The committee had erupted into chaos, but Crockett's face showed no remorse, only a triumphant smirk. The clip ended, and Bondi spoke without turning to the screen. "This wasn't a roast," she said. "This was a hearing on government accountability, and you chose to mock someone's appearance instead of debating their ideas. Do you regret that, Congresswoman?" The question lingered, a challenge. Crockett didn't flinch. "I won't sit here and be disrespected," she replied, her voice controlled but simmering with anger. "If someone comes at me, they're going to get it back. I'm not here to be silent. I'm here to fight." She crossed her arms again, a defensive stance. Bondi's expression didn't waver. "There's a difference between fighting for truth and fighting for clout," she said. "You weren't defending facts. You were defending your brand. And when you turned this chamber into a circus, you didn't hurt Marjorie Taylor Greene. You hurt this institution." Bondi's voice grew harder, a hammer striking steel. "And the worst part? The Democratic Party applauded it. They posted the clip. They sold the moment. They didn't condemn your words. They amplified them. Because in the modern left, volume beats virtue and outrage beats order." Crockett's eyes narrowed. "Don't come for me, Ms. Bondi," she snapped. "I won't take etiquette lessons from a woman who defended the most corrupt president in American history." Her tone carried a personal venom, but Bondi absorbed the blow with icy calm. "This isn't about Donald Trump," Bondi said, her voice frigid. "It's about you. It's about a member of Congress who uses personal insults as political currency, who turns hearings into scream sessions, who thinks shouting equals strength." Bondi opened a folder, flipping pages as her voice echoed. "This wasn't the first time. Committee after committee, you've interrupted witnesses, mocked colleagues, walked out when things didn't go your way. And now we move to something darker." Bondi's tone shifted, growing deeper, more ominous. "Congresswoman Crockett," she began, "there's a difference between passion and danger. Today, we'll talk about the moments when your words crossed the line, and when your hands did too." Her eyes never left Crockett's as she lifted a placard from the table. In bold red letters it read, "Ted Cruz, that dude needs to be knocked over the head, like hard." The words were Crockett's, spoken at a live Democratic campaign event, met with laughter and applause from the crowd. The room stiffened. Some representatives shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at the placard. Bondi's voice struck like a gavel. "This wasn't said behind closed doors," she said. "This wasn't a tweet taken out of context. This was a public statement by a sitting member of Congress, joking or not, about physically assaulting a sitting United States senator." The crowd laughed. They clapped. "But tell me, Congresswoman, is that what your resistance looks like now? Cheap applause lines built on threats of violence?" Crockett leaned forward, her voice tight with defense. "It was a joke," she said, slamming her hands on the table. "Everyone knew it. I made it clear I don't condone violence." But her words faltered slightly under Bondi's piercing gaze. Bondi raised an eyebrow, not mocking, just questioning. "You don't condone violence," Bondi repeated, enunciating each word slowly. "But you joked about cracking a senator's skull. You're a federal lawmaker, not a barroom heckler. And with political violence rising in this country, you don't get to be cute with your words anymore." Bondi's tone was now a warning, sharp and unyielding. "And this wasn't a one-off. Your public record isn't just fiery, it's incendiary." Bondi opened another file, the rustle of pages echoing in the room. "A month later," she continued, "you took to a virtual rally and demanded someone take down Elon Musk. Days after that, a Tesla dealership in your district burned. Coincidence? Perhaps. But when you traffic in dangerous rhetoric, you don't get the benefit of the doubt." Bondi's eyes bored into Crockett. "You said the best birthday gift you could receive was watching Elon Musk taken down. Within 72 hours, a Tesla facility in your district was firebombed. No condemnation from you, no public statement, no apology, just silence. Because the arson didn't hurt your narrative, it supported it." Crockett's face tightened. "You're twisting my words," she snapped, her voice now defensive. "I was talking about taking him down politically, economically, not physically. Stop bending my words to fit your playbook." Her hands hit the table again, but the gesture lacked its earlier conviction. Bondi remained unmoved. "Words matter, Congresswoman," she said, her voice calm but cutting. "Especially yours. You have a platform, influence. You're not a protester in the streets anymore. You're a member of Congress. And when people hear you joke about beating opponents and taking billionaires down by force, some will act on it." Bondi paused, then pressed on. "But even if it were just words, what happened next proved it wasn't just rhetoric." Physical altercation. Bondi reached for a new folder labeled simply Capitol Hallway Incident. "Let's talk about your interaction with a member of the Free Press," she said, her voice colder, more precise. "A journalist approached you in the hallway. The question was, 'Congresswoman, do you condemn violence in politics?' You didn't answer. You didn't de-escalate. You slapped the phone from his hand, and in doing so, you scratched him, physically. Capitol Police had to separate you. This wasn't spin, it wasn't a partisan rumor, it was on video. The room's atmosphere shifted again. A flicker of panic crossed Crockett's face, quickly masked. "He was harassing me," she replied, her voice taut but controlled. "I felt cornered, and I defended my space." But her words sounded hollow against Bondi's unrelenting stare. "Harassment," Bondi said, her tone devoid of softness. "The tape shows a reporter standing still, asking a question you refused to answer. So you lashed out. Do you think physical assault is an appropriate response to uncomfortable questions?" The question pierced Crockett like a dagger, but she didn't respond immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was strained. "He was being aggressive," she said. "I reacted." But the excuse hung weakly in the air. Bondi's reply was swift and cold. "The video doesn't lie, Congresswoman. You do. You weren't cornered, you were challenged, and you chose violence over words." Bondi closed the folder with a snap, but her assault wasn't over. Contradictory lifestyle. "Now, let's talk about your lifestyle," Bondi said, her voice taking on a faintly mocking edge. "You rail against the elite. You denounce wealth. You attack white privilege. You speak about the injustice of economic inequality. But the moment you got to Washington, you started living like the very people you claim to despise." Bondi spread a series of photos across the table. Crockett at a $10,000-a-plate fundraiser in Manhattan, posing with celebrity donors at a rooftop wine bar, arriving at a panel in a black SUV motorcade, escorted by security. Crockett's face hardened. "That's a smear," she countered, her voice rising. "I live modestly. I fight for the people." But Bondi's eyes glinted with triumph. "Do you?" Bondi asked, her voice a dagger. "Do the people know you flew first class on their dime to a climate change summit where you lectured about carbon footprints? Do they know your campaign spent tens of thousands on luxury hotels and transportation for equity panels? Do they know that while you call others white elites, you're dining with the Silicon Valley millionaires who fund every progressive pass in America?" Each question peeled back another layer of Crockett's defense. "You call yourself a voice for the people," Bondi continued, her voice filling the room. "But you don't ride buses. You don't wait in lines. You don't worry about your safety, because armed officers are always nearby. You don't live the life you claim to understand. You just tweet about it." Bondi's words were a relentless tide, washing away Crockett's facade. Crockett sat stone-faced, the room silent around her. No one could look away, because in that moment, the real Jasmine Crockett was on trial, and the jury wasn't Congress, but the American people. Bondi prepared her final blow. The room was silent, heavy with tension. Pam Bondi's voice cut through, slow and deliberate. "You claimed oppression, Congresswoman," she said, eyes locked on Jasmine Crockett. "But here, with your badge, staff, and security, you are the system. You can't burn it down from within. You can't wield both power and rebellion." She paused, then struck. "You weren't a revolutionary. You were a rebrand, a loud product of a party that values chaos over competence." Crockett sat frozen, her fire dimmed. No applause, no cameras, just a stark, humiliating quiet. Bondi pressed on. "This wasn't about race or gender. It was about your record, unworthy of this office." Rising, she delivered her final blow. "You were a rising star once, but today the filter's off. You shouted justice, hid in privilege, preached poverty while cashing checks, railed against police, then called them. I stripped your slogans. What's left is a fraud.